Tesla driver has survived a semi-crush. A semi fell on top of a Model 3, and as you can see, the damage caused was remarkably small. The Model 3's strength is insane. Now, once the semi was removed, taken off the Model 3, you can see here that the car, well, it's not completely destroyed at all. Its windshield is angled, though, about 15 degrees from horizontal. And what's left of the also shattered glass roof is about a foot lower, around 30 centimeters lower than where it once was located. But fortunately for the driver, he obviously was struck by less weight, so didn't die. Now, if there had been passengers in the back of this vehicle, there's a good chance they would have died. But here's what actually happened. The Model 3 was cruising on a highway when a truck next to them actually lost control and flipped straight on top of the EV. This had nothing to do with the Tesla driver. The person who was actually crushed, or their car was partially crushed, actually was shocked by how strong the model was. He couldn't believe that a semi had rolled onto his car and caused only this amount of damage. And this is actually an incredibly small amount of damage when you consider the weight of a semi. He actually went and a couple of weeks later purchased another Tesla. Now, comments in the comment sections all over the internet are split. A lot of the people actually say this had nothing to do with the car, it was purely luck. But there are other people who actually know what's really going on. And that, in fact, is not true at all. There's been a viral news story going around, and there's a lot of misinformation being spread here. In this story, you can see here a Tesla was run over and crushed by a semi, as in a huge semi truck. I have personally seen these sorts of incidents before, and I've seen people inside of them. It happened to me once where I was just riding my bicycle, and I saw a car was crushed, and the people inside were just completely crushed. Generally, that's what happens in this situation. However, if you were to buy a safer car, which I keep repeating over and over again on this channel, and I'll keep on doing so, then there's a much higher likelihood of you living. Considering the fact that over the last 12 months, deaths on Australian roads have gone up substantially, even though cars are much safer now, I still don't think people are listening. When you buy your car, right, why do people never consider safety as a primary issue? I mean, not never, but most people don't, do they? I mean, how many people could actually tell you how safe one car is versus another? Almost no one actually knows. And I've posted crash videos comparing different cars to each other. No one watches the videos. I find this crazy. I think, you know what? You're driving your car. You've got your children in your car, right? And because you couldn't be asked, because you couldn't be bothered, and I'm not speaking about you in particular, I'm talking about people in general, because people in general, most people could not be bothered, they could potentially be driving in a car where there's about a 10 times higher likelihood of death in a significant crash than what there otherwise would be. The solution is so obvious, and I'm just shocked that people continue to purchase vehicles. Well, they're death traps, to put it that way. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching The Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. Do you remember that story? Numerous stories going on. Ford was sued, billions of dollars. And the reason was because the roofs of their vehicles weren't structurally sound. The F-150, when it would roll over, the roof would come off and the cars would just crush like a tin can. And literally hundreds of people died in this situation. That's not an old story. That's not from the 80s or the 70s, right? That's from the 2000s. This is even the 2010s, this has been happening. Even the 20s, this has been happening. So there is a very real likelihood, if you don't actually do your homework, that you're involved in a crash, may not be your fault, and you end up dying. Now, I'm going on about this a lot because people are so rudely in the comments saying things that are completely false. Completely false. And it's because they are lazy and they are opinionated. Lazy and opinionated to me is something I don't have much time for. They're saying things like this. This Tesla vehicle is just luck. Any other car, the people would have been fine as well. And hundreds of people actually think this is true. Maybe thousands do, I'm not sure. I can tell you right now, luck has nothing to freaking do with it. Nothing. Having a vehicle made with high strength steel, made with a structural structural castings at both ends of the vehicle, made with a structural battery pack. Now, that doesn't have to be a Tesla. My car has that. My Xpeng G6 has that. But having that type of vehicle, people in China, they know this, yeah? That's why a lot of people, what they will do before they buy an electric car, they'll go and say, okay, does it have a structural battery pack? Does it have this? They'll ask about it. And that's a big sales point. That's a big sales point. One of the things that Geely, Zeekr, Xpeng really heavily promote in China is the fact their cars are safer. Now, a lot of people say, well, Chinese cars, they're not known for being safe. That is 100% false. In fact, I'll give you an example about this. BMW, right? Premium cars, expensive. Are they really? Are they really safe? Well, BMW's iX3. That received a 3-star crash test rating in Europe. Since then, over the following 6 months, there was at least 10 different Chinese EVs, some of which you've probably never heard of, some of which you have, that all scored a 5-star crash rating on that same exact testing scale in Europe. Not in China, they did in China as well, but also in Europe. So the brand of the car is not really what matters so much necessarily, but I think it's extremely important. Now, here's an example. A lot of people think, I bought a new car, surely it's going to have a good crash worthiness. Well, is that really true? No, it's absolutely not. The new Jeep EV, right? You can buy the new Jeep EV. It's like a mini little front wheel drive SUV. Looks pretty strong, pretty safe. It got a 3-star score. And it's not cheap. It's no cheaper than other rivals which got 5 stars. There is numerous examples of this where you can just choose the car that's safer. And generally the car that's safer will be built using what I mentioned earlier. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a crash where the driver of the car was a doctor and his wife and children were in the car and he drove off a cliff. I actually rode down basically the same stretch of road. And my wife and I, we actually stopped there because it was pouring with rain. It was hammering with rain and we were pretty scared. And that's meant to be one of the most dangerous sections of road in the United States. Anyhow, a lady came and picked us up in her van and took us back to her place and let us stay in her place for a couple of days while there was this crazy storm. So it's an amazing story of American generosity. But this gets me back to the story. This guy has driven off the cliff intentionally, trying to basically murder himself and his family, and he's failed. The entire family, even though it was a 100-foot cliff drop, actually lived. Now, a lot of people had done this before. That's how we had gotten this idea. Other people, that's where they go to commit suicide. They drive off there, they crash, their car crashes, and they die. And everyone else who had done this, and there's been a lot of them, had died. Everyone else. The first time a Tesla driver does it, well, all the occupants of the car lived. Now, I believe him and his wife had some significant injuries, but they ended up being okay. The children lived, and this really goes to prove the point. And it's not the only point. Yes, there's some crashes you won't live in. There's some crashes that Teslas are involved in, that other cars are involved in, where you're not going to live in. But why not give yourself the best chance for success? Here you can see the structural rigidity of this Tesla. And there are many cars, like I said, that I mentioned before, have this kind of structural rigidity now, using gigacasting. If it wasn't so good, why is Toyota saying we're going to use it for our cars now in the future? Why is Hyundai saying as well? Half of the legacy automakers that exist now, even Ford are doing it, are moving to building vehicles in this way now. It's safer, it's stronger, it's lighter, it's more efficient. It's simply the best way to manufacture a car. It's not a myth that some cars are safer than others. There's actually, a very good chance if you were driving a different vehicle. I mean, if you were driving an F-150 and this thing rolled on you with their tin can opener roof, pretty good chance you'd actually be dead.